Whether they be good or bad, these are 10 things that people use as arguments for classic WoW servers. 10 things that are remembered about vanilla WoW. Number 10. Only having one spec per class. Are you a warrior who wanted DPS? No, you weren't. You were a tank. You wanted to be a shadow priest? Do you PvP? No? Then you're a healer. A holy priest healer, to be exact. No one went full disc. Were you a druid who wanted to do anything in raid? No, you were there to give innervate to the healers. The holy priest healers. Specs weren't really balanced like they are today. You were lucky if one of your specs was raid viable and you were going to like it. Plus, since dual spec wasn't a thing, and changing your spec too much cost too much gold if you did it too often, you kinda had to pick something and just stick to it. Number 9, 40-man raiding. It's hard enough to get 20 competent people together at the same time every week to run Mythix. I can't imagine how much of a pain in the ass it was to get 40 people together. But I bet it was fun to feel like you were throwing an army of people at the hardest bosses, instead of just the elite task force thing we've got going on today with half as many people. Number 8, class quests. At level 10, hunters had to go out and tame 3 different pets before being able to tame a real one for themselves. Warlocks had to do lengthy quest chains to summon their demons, then defeat them before they got to use them. Shamans had to run halfway across the world to get their totems. Rogues had to level up 2 class-specific professions to make their own poisons, or to pick locks. The list goes on and on. Pretty much all classes had quests that needed to be completed in order to get basic abilities. And you could be severely gimped if you ignored them and just leveled up normally, since some of your core class abilities came from these quests. Nowadays, you just get all your abilities automatically as you level up. There are still some class-specific quests in order to get special armor and weapons, but they're optional, so most people never do them, or even know that they exist. The closest thing we have to class quests in Legion is the artifact quest lines, which are actually pretty faithful to old school class quests, as they have you use all of your abilities in creative ways to solve problems. Number 7, grinding. Everything was a grind. Quest items routinely had low drop rates. There wasn't enough quests to get to max level, so you had to grind mobs for those last few levels. You would miss all the time with new weapons, so you had to go out and grind out weapon skills to use them. No daily quests meant you had to grind any and all gold you got, since there was no way to earn it passively. Many raid fights required you to have resist gear that you had to grind. Many attunements required random items from dungeons that only dropped for one player, so lots of dungeon grinding. There was also lots of attunements to do pretty much all of the raids, which all required a huge grind. Getting high warlord in PvP meant full-time job levels of grinding PvP all day, every day, and many, many more grinds. Nothing we have in Legion is close to the grinding that went on back then. Unless you're a mythic raider, part of a world-first pushing guild trying to grind out as much artifact power as possible, and even then it's not really comparable to some of the vanilla grinds. Number 6. No catch-up mechanics. Start late in vanilla and want to raid the new Naxxramas raid? Well, you'd better run AQ40 first. But in order to run AQ40, you're going to need gear from at least Blackwing Layer. But if you want to do Blackwing Layer, you need a cloak made from Onyxia scales, and at least gear from Molten Core. But if you want to do Molten Core or Onyxia, you need gear from Upper Blackrock Spire, Stratholme, and other high-level dungeons to at least get your Tier 1 set, plus fire resistance gear. And don't forget all the attunements required to do all of those places. There's a reason Blizzard remade Naxx for Wrath. Almost no one got to do the original one. Today, if you want to start raiding in the newest raid, there are so many different ways to get gear good enough to start doing normal mode, it's not even worth listing them here. If you have an alt that you casually play on, you probably have gear good enough to start at least running the normal mode of the current raid tier, and then just work your way on up from there. Number 5. Carrying around stacks of food while questing. Today, leveling has been made so easy that Blizzard is actually looking at ways to make it less brain dead, without reverting it back to how it used to be. But in vanilla WoW, mobs hit hard, mana pools were low, and default regen was garbage. Some classes had some kind of regen mechanic tied to getting killing blows on mobs to kind of lessen the effect, but no matter what class you played, you needed to have food on you at all times. After killing maybe 5 to 10 mobs, your health or mana would need to be replenished, and you could be lazy and just auto-attack, but eventually you were going to have to eat and drink. Mages were actually extremely helpful for other players for their ability to create food and water and trade it to people. Today, the only people who need to eat or drink are healers in mythic dungeons to get mana back in between pools, and raiders for the buffs they provide only, and not the actual mechanic that eating provides. Food items while leveling are just kind of an optional thing that might sometimes give you a buff if you get a special food item from a quest. And until pretty recently, you still started off with food in your bags when you made new characters. But that's no longer the case. Every class has some kind of self-heal or bubble now, and you don't run out of mana at low levels anymore unless you're specifically trying to. Number 4. Codexes. Believe it or not, some class abilities couldn't be learned from your class trainer, or from class quests. You needed to get special items called Codexes, which dropped mostly from raid bosses in order to learn basic class abilities. Like hunters, for example, got their trank shot ability from a Codex, which was one of the few ways to purge rage effects back in the day. And most other classes could only learn the highest spell rank of certain abilities from Codexes. It was a fun RPG element to the game that sometimes you would get stronger or learn new abilities by killing bosses. Today, they're not really a thing anymore, but there are various items that give cosmetic abilities, like the different animal mage polymorphs, or the pet training manual that teaches your pet to loot corpses for you. So it's kinda similar, but you no longer learn core abilities from items that drop in raids, like the Codexes from vanilla. Number 3. Hunter pets. Today, hunter pets are more of a cosmetic than they are anything else. But it used to be that pets had special abilities and stats depending on which beast you tamed. For example, gorillas were the only pet to actually have an AoE, so getting to a high enough level to actually tame one was a special event. Lots of different pets had special hidden abilities as well, like a certain rare cat having a less than 1 second attack speed, which made him attack faster than all other pets, or how wolves from AV could run faster than mounts. It was a treat to go out and hunt rare beasts to use their hidden abilities, or to just go out and get a new special ability to use on a normal pet. But players just had to ruin it. Eventually, everyone found out which pets were the best pets, and everyone was running around with exactly the same pets. I remember in Wrath of the Lich King when I first started raiding, the best pet was a wolf. So all hunters only had wolves. Or maybe cats if they didn't mind a slight DPS decrease, as that was the second highest DPS pet. So Blizzard over the many expansions kept trying to streamline pets so that players could have more choice with them, until finally they just got rid of nearly all special abilities and just made the good ones baseline that everyone could use. Now, there are still pets with special abilities, don't get me wrong. Turtles can shell shield to act like a personal tank, corehounds can bloodlust, moths can battle res, but it's a complete shell of its former self, from when all pets had special abilities. Number 2. The community. Did you know people used to actually know each other on their respective servers? So many things you did in-game required a group of people, and you couldn't always rely on your guild to run everything, so you had to pug things. And with there being no auto group finders, people had to actually talk to each other and play nice. You would develop a rep on your server for being good at what you did, or bad. Being known can go both ways. You'd recognize people in trade chat, or notice people were running by them in major cities. Forcing people to interact with each other in order to do everything made the game's in-game community seem bigger. Today, you mainly just talk to your guild and rarely other people unless you absolutely need to. Running random dungeons are pretty much quiet. It's very common to get in a group with 4 other people and not say a word to them over the course of a 30-minute run. If you go out and do world quests and use the add-on to search for groups, like I do, to make them quicker, I can't remember one person saying a thing in over 100 world quests. In fact, I can't remember anyone ever saying anything in a world quest group, despite doing hundreds of them like I've said. I personally love this. I'm totally antisocial and I hated having to look for groups to gear up and raid. The Dungeon Finder was my favorite addition to the game, but being forced to talk to people to do everything is a thing that's remembered about vanilla WoW and one of the cornerstone arguments for people wanting classic servers. I can understand this argument, even if I personally don't really care for it. And number 1, talent trees. Old school talent trees, where you had a set amount of points to spend on things you thought were fun. I personally loved old school talents. You got a new one every time you leveled up, which made new levels a lot of fun, because you knew you just got a little bit stronger in a tangible sense, and could feel like you were progressing to something bigger. Sometimes reaching a new talented ability could double your damage output, since a lot of the core abilities were buried deep in a spec's tree. Nowadays, you get a ton of your core spells early on, so that you can actually get used to doing what you'll be doing at max level. It makes more sense this way, and I do like it, but a part of me also really like the old method better. The talent trees of today do also sometimes give you big boosts to your abilities when you get a new row unlocked, but it's just not the same as slowly working your way up to it over time, since you just get it all at once every 15 levels or so. Hell, the last time I had fun leveling a new character was with my Demon Hunter, and that was because you got a new talent every 2 levels instead of every 15. It almost felt like having old talent points again. The artifact weapon design was really close to recapturing that magic. I did like getting new traits on the weapon while leveling up for the first time in Legion, but the fact that you just get everything eventually kinda kills some of the fun of it. To the point where I kind of like how the Netherlight Crucible forces you to pick an ability over another. That element of choice is fun for me, and made me want to farm artifact power for the first time ever in the expansion just to unlock all of the choices. Okay, and that's the end of the video. I'm pretty sure I covered literally everything that people remember fondly about vanilla WoW. But if you feel like I missed any important ones, just let me know. Because I'm pretty sure I already have a bunch of comments saying something like, actually, I was a DPS warrior in vanilla.